Hi viewers, Jackie Dresser here with the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. Even though the snow is flying, we're going to talk about ripeness of fruit today. So ripeness of fruit is measured in juice-soluble solids or degrees Brix. And this year you might remember a podcast where we were out in our railroad block intensively measuring Brix. And what we did was, in every other post length and every other row, we took a fruit sample and we threw it in an industrial blender and we ground it up and we tested it on a refractometer to get the degrees Brix or the ripeness. And back in that podcast, I let you know that the reason we were doing that was to make a map of Brix. So here it is. We processed the data and we mapped it. And even though this is only a 6.5 acre block, you can really see a tremendous amount of variation in Brix. So in the dark red, that fruit, and even the orange sections, that fruit did not meet minimum specifications at the plant, which meant that if we had delivered all of the fruit at that level, our load would have been rejected. And this is sort of important to see this variation in a vineyard, even a small one, because if you're out there sampling for Brix, where you take your sample is very important. In this case, if we only had 1 or 2 samples and we put them in an area that was closer to the edge of the vineyard, those values were up at 18, 16.5, 18 Brix, and that's well within optimum range of ripening. So we would have thought, hey, no problem, let's pick this vineyard, and we would have delivered it and gotten a surprise when our load was rejected because we didn't sample adequately. So interestingly, this Brix map was really closely correlated with our last NDVI scan, which was June 24th. And you can see in this map that there is some substantial variation here as well. In the areas of dark red, that's where the leaf area was either reduced or not functioning. And this year, a lot of the leaf area just wasn't functional because it was potassium deficient. So the leaves are going to be darker in color, and the NDVI sensors that we use are actually sensitive to that. So if a leaf is not bright green and healthy, it's going to show up as a low NDVI signature. So what we did to investigate this further is we went out to the same sample locations where we took those intensive Brix measurements, and we visually rated each post length as healthy, mild potassium deficiency, moderate potassium deficiency, or severe potassium deficiency. And we found a direct inverse relationship between Brix and potassium deficiency, meaning that the leaf area that wasn't functional, those areas saw the most inhibited ripening in the vineyard. So why is this important? Well, it's important to note that spatial variation in your vineyard is not limited to leaf area. It's not even limited to yield, that it might take place in the form of ripening, which in this region is key to how the growers actually get paid for their fruit. So we don't expect all of you to go out and take measurements this intensively. By taking these spatial data sets, we can really start to hone in on how to make management decisions. In this case, looking at this Brix map, your entire vineyard really isn't a problem. It's just where you're seeing those inhibited ripening areas. So you really want to go out there and scout and see, what is this issue? And if it is, like we saw, really correlated to potassium deficiency, maybe you want to go out there and put on your potash, but maybe you don't need to do it across your entire vineyard. Maybe you need to target it or increase your add rate in the areas that really need it, which saw those reduced Brix values in this growing season. Looking back at the NDVI map, if this is all that you had and you weren't able to go out and take Brix samples every other post length, every other row, that maybe you could just go to those really deep red areas or maybe those yellow areas and take your Brix measurements there and take a look at, while the rest of your vineyard might have been ripe, what's going on there, what is it tied to, and how can you change your management to try to help those areas that are a little bit weaker than the rest of the vineyard. So really trying to work smarter, not necessarily work harder. So that's what we're up to, and in this railroad block where we have these Brix measurements, our next order of business is to take pruning weights so that we can take a look at the relationship between Brix, potassium deficiency, yield, which we also have from our yield monitors, and pruning weight, so we can kind of glean more meaning on the crop load relationship to Brix. So we'll tune back in when we have that data to talk through with you. Thanks for viewing, and if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the area below.